I request the backend team to accept the waiting people. Okay, we are still having some participants coming in, so I'll take another minute or so. Kishore Valera. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining in. I'm Sumitra Goenka, and I have with me Uma Sudendra, who is my colleague. I welcome you all to this Leadership Acceleration Program. This is a series of webinar which is initiated by Triangle. The essence of leadership is to influence and not authority. This program, the Leadership Acceleration Program, was launched by Triangle last week, and it was inaugurated by Lieutenant General Dr. D.B. Shekatkar. And today we are pleased to have Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia sir with us. He is a former DGMO, Director General Military Operations, and currently the Director of St. Joe's. So I welcome, sir, that you have accepted to be a part of this program. We are really honored with your presence. With your kind permission, sir, we will start the program in another 2-3 minutes time, as we are still getting a few participants joining in. Firstly, let me just take you all through the agenda. We will firstly run a very small presentation about our company, and then my colleague Uma will explain you in brief about this Leadership Acceleration Program which we have launched, and also introduce our speaker, Lieutenant General Bhatia. General Bhatia will then give his address in about 20 to 25 minutes time, which will be followed by a moderated Q&A session. Due to the paucity of time, my backend team is actually will be working on the questions, and we will be combining a few questions to make it more relevant to the subject. And also we would request some of the participants will be given an opportunity to ask the questions to limit their time to only 20 to 25 seconds each, so that maximum number of people can interact, because last time what we saw that there were questions which were very lengthy, so we don't want that to happen. So please restrict your questions to 1 or 2 sentences. And you can also continue putting your questions addressed to me. You can select on the chat box my name, and you can add your questions here, so that my backend team will work and collate all the questions, and then we will General Bhatia will answer these moderated questions. And post that, we will run a very small presentation about the civilian Siachen trip, which Uma had led last year, and hence please do stay with us till the end of the program. Just to give you a brief background, like I already stated, that Lieutenant General Shekatkar had inaugurated this program on the 4th of July. This week, we are honored to have Lieutenant General Bhatia. Next week, we are focusing on the HR leadership, and Dr. Prashant Salgaonkar, who is currently the HR head of Shapurji Palonji, he will speak about cross-cultural leadership. So I would request the people who are from HR background not to miss this, and everybody else also can join in to understand how different countries have different leadership styles. On 25th July, we are honored to have AVM Sinha, retired, who is the advisor of BEL and former commandant of Software Development Institute, Indian Air Force. He is also there with us today, sir. Welcome you, sir, on this program. And on 1st August, we will be having Padma Shri A.S. Kiran Kumarji, who is the man behind the Mangalyaan Mars mission. He has agreed to speak about leadership, especially about how ISRO is leading the space here. And after that, we will be on 8th August having an all women's panel. We are having a few eminent leaders who have excelled in their own way. We will be having the IAS of Buldhana, Mrs. Suman Chandra. She is fighting COVID in the district very efficiently. We will be having Dr. Alka Manke, who was the chairperson of Keshav Srishti Trust, which is a very big NGO in Mumbai. Dr. Ragini, who is a noted ophthalmologist, and she is a social worker. She does very good work in the area of rural India, and also in the women, with the women of India. And Miss Lakshmi Madhusudan, who is from the corporate India. She is a part of the Guardian Insurance as a HR head. And we also have a few more confirmations our way. We are trying to introduce these candid leadership sessions where our speakers are going to talk about their experiences. They are going to have a conversation with the participants, and we are trying to make this as lively as possible so that the participants can benefit. And I think in today's age where India is facing a very difficult situation along with the entire world, of course, but we also should see an opportunity. It is the leaders who will create a difference. This is a time when we have to, leadership is not only going to be from top down approach. It has to be also from the levels across board, across different sectors. And it is definitely going to be the innovators. It is definitely going to be the leadership which will come from the ground level, which will take shape and lead India in a bigger way. So I hope that you all continue joining us for these sessions, and please keep on giving us your feedback over the email, and also keep on writing to us in the chat windows or by WhatsApp in whatever way you can, so that we keep getting feedbacks and also improve upon our sessions. And also we can, if you have any unanswered questions, then you can mail me on the registration link, and we will try to revert back to you within a week's time or so, if possible. By the speaker can get back to you. Like last week, General Shekatkar has volunteered to respond, and I do have some questions with me, but I'm sorry, like I was a little tied up this entire week, so I couldn't reach out to him. But definitely those people who have attended and asked questions, I'm sure this week we will be getting back to them with their answers. So I will now run a very short video about my company profile. And after that, I will ask Uma to speak briefly about the initiative, and then introduce Lieutenant General Bhatia.
Hello.
You're disturbing me too much. Wait. Yeah, Uma, over to you. But before that, I will just take a minute. We have with us a very prominent audience who are a part of this program today, and I'm really honored that all of you have joined in. We have Lieutenant General Patil, who was a former DGMO. We have former Deputy NSA, Dr. Satyendra Pradhan, who is on the screen right now. Thank you, sir, for joining in. We have Dr. Alka Mandke. I'll just try to, okay. Then we have Dr. Janmaya Thakur from NIC. We have AVM Pranay Sinha. Yeah, we have Mr. Kishore Bhalera, who is one of my idol figures or whatever mentors in HR, you can say. We had been always looking ahead to his sessions and his guidance. I have Kiran Kumar ji from ONGC, who is the CEO of ONGC Foundation. I have Mr. Somas Jeevan, again a stalwart from HR field. Shri Atul Kulkarni, who is a logistics expert and on several forums with Government of India and part of IIM Shillong. And I also have Dr. Deepa Prakash, who is a food scientist, Dr. Meenu Kumar, who is a artist. So thank you all for joining in. And at the same time, I would again welcome all of you once again for joining in. I couldn't take all the names. I could only spot a few. And so I have taken them. So with due respect, forgive me in case I've missed anyone. Over to you, Uma. And then we can introduce Dr. Lieutenant General Bhatia also.
Thank you so much, Sumitra. Good evening, everyone. Namaskar. Welcome to the second webinar of our Leadership Acceleration Program. And it's a real pleasure to have all of you with us here. And this is especially for AVM Pranay Sinha, sir. Very happy to see our data sovereignty book right behind you there. You know, it boosts our morale to find our book in, you know, so many places. So thank you very much for placing it there. The Leadership Acceleration Program, we started basically to, you know, help organizations get into training as far as certain very niche segments are concerned. So this program is run for, you know, women-oriented groups, women-oriented organizations. We run it for people who are specially abled, you know, what is very popularly called as Divyang. And we also run a leadership acceleration program in the outdoors where human beings are at their best behavior, I would say. So, and the outdoors for us is not taking people to a resort or a hotel. It is truly the outdoors, because that's where we get them to the mountains, to you know, to do river rafting, to do hot air ballooning, to do a variety of adventure activities, which brings out true human behavior, and their attitude and aptitude both is there for everyone to see. So that's a little bit about the Leadership Acceleration Program in a nutshell. I won't be taking too much time because we definitely want to get our speaker for the day on, and we want all of you to listen to him. I've personally had the pleasure of knowing General Bhatia for a very long time. Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, Param Vishesh Seva Medal, Ati Vishesh Seva Medal, and Sena Medal, former DGMO, currently the director of Sanjaus, which is a think tank. 40 years of distinguished service in the army. One of the most important you know, positions or role that he's held as DGMO, basically responsible for combat effectiveness and operational readiness of the 1.2 million strong army that we have. The charter of the DGMO is all-encompassing and includes directly contributing to the national security strategy, provisioning wherewithal, force structure, perspective planning, modernization, induction of weapons and equipment, humanitarian assistance as and when required, disaster relief, military diplomacy, manpower planning, cyber, psychological, and information warfare. That is the gamut of responsibility he had as DGMO. He was commissioned into the Parachute Regiment in June 1974. He commanded the 6th Battalion of the Parachute Regiment and 14 Assam Rifles along India-Myanmar border. He's a graduate of Defense Services Staff College, the College of Defense Management, and the prestigious National Defense College. His experience is phenomenal. It is wide-ranging in higher command staff, instructional appointments, both. His higher command assignments included that of Mountain Brigade in North Bengal, Infantry Division on the line of control, and an operational corps along the India-China border. So he is actually the man of the hour right now. You get to see him on a lot of TV interviews and debates. And hold on, his operational experience, he has been actively part of Op Rakshak in J&K. He's been part of Op Vijay, which is Kargil, Op Rhino in Assam, Op Hifazat in Manipur, Op Orchid in Nagaland, Falcon along the India-China border, Op All Clear in Bhutan, and finally Op Cactus in Maldives. He has written on a wide range of subjects, regional national security, international relations, special operations, defense reforms, counterterrorism, terrorism, human resource development, military leadership. I can actually just go on about General Bhatia's credentials. He has also had tremendous experience in disaster management. As Corps Commander, he was responsible for planning and deployment of resources and execution of rescue, relief, and rehabilitation operations during Sikkim earthquake in 2011. As DGMO, he has been responsible for planning and execution of rescue and relief operations during one of the worst ever disasters that we've seen in Uttarakhand. That's June 2013, where nearly 35,000 people were evacuated under some of the most difficult and challenging circumstances. He is the colonel of the parachute. He was the colonel of the Parachute Regiment from December 2010 to February 2014. And the Special Forces actually grew tremendously under his supervision, leadership, all of that. He has also been part of the esteemed Shekatkar Committee, a committee of experts that was convened by the government for the transformation of Indian Armed Forces. This happened in 2016. General Bhatia is also an avid reader and a golfer and is currently based out of Delhi. Ladies and gentlemen, General Bhatia for you.
Jai Hind, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Umaji, for this introduction. I don't know how much I deserve in this. Thank you, Sumitraji, for giving the opportunity, and to Team Triangle Global to speak on leadership expedition program. I am fully aware of the fact that the inaugural talk on leadership was given by General Shekatkar. He's a very tall figure in the army and otherwise also. Of course, I never was fortunate enough to serve under him, but then I was part of the Shekatkar committee, and then thereafter he's been a mentor, guide, and philosopher. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be speaking after him. I'm also aware that General Venki Patil is also here. He's one of the most well-regarded, well-respected military leaders. We as youngsters always looked up to him. He's a role model for many of us. I hope I live up to the expectations of my two seniors, whom I have always held in the highest esteem. The brief given to me is to detail, as part of military leadership, bunker to boardroom. I must confess that I've spent many years in the bunkers and have good experience in the bunkers, but I've never been to a boardroom. So pardon me on that if I cannot really relate to a boardroom, but I would like to tell you about the bunkers and how I think, in my perspective, how it could be possibly applied in other spheres of life. So that is the brief, and I will take about 20 minutes as given to me. I'll try to be very crisp about it. Life is all about presentism and recentism. And pandemic COVID-19 has changed everything. It has changed the way we live, our way of life. It has changed our values, our individuals, our family system, society, people, nation, international relations, emerging world order. You name it, it has changed everything. And I think it has impacted leadership in many, many ways, whether it's political leadership, it is military leadership, it is business and corporate leadership, it is religious leaders. Leadership of all kinds have been impacted. The fact is now that we are talking, conversation with each other is over a digital platform. We see everyone in passport size only. And if we meet them physically, we can't even recognize them because the mask is on. We only get to see the eyes. So these are the changes we'll have to live with. I think we'll have to live in the world of tomorrow, where the pandemic COVID-19 has actually going to bring about changes in our way of life in many, many ways. We are still seeing the beginning of it. We're not seeing the end of it as yet, and the world over. So that is something we'll have to factor in. And especially with the pandemic, I think empathy becomes very important, more important than anything else. The world is changing and we have to be empathetic to the people. We cannot expect them to perform, behave, and do things as they were doing earlier. So the first and the foremost thing of a leader is to understand change. There are resistance to change. We are in comfort zone. So change is exceedingly important, and that is where the leader comes in to be the engine for change, to ensure that crises are managed well and to do damage control. I think these three things are a must for any leader, and whether in the military or otherwise. Now, I've been a soldier for nearly, not a soldier, I've been in uniform 50 years. I joined the army through proper channels. I joined the Sainik School, then National Defense Academy, Indian Military Academy, and then the Parachute Regiment. 50 years in uniform. I have hardly seen life outside the uniform. So I will obviously talk more and more about the armed forces and the army in particular, and my regiment in greater detail. I was commissioned into the Parachute Regiment. As we all know, India has the largest standing voluntary army in the world at 1.24 million. And in this Parachute Regiment, let me, General Patil, excuse me if I may say so, but then I'm very proud of my regiment like everyone else. Parachute Regiment is one regiment which is an elite regiment in the Indian Army, and only volunteers are accepted there. And the volunteers, when they come, they're probated. There's a probation period. And I think it is one of the toughest probations anywhere in the world. And the acceptance rate for officers is about 20% only. We were 14 of us who joined, and 4 were selected. I was fortunately one of them. And that is how the selection rate is. So when I joined the Parachute Regiment, I thought that was the end all, and I had achieved my aim in life. My aim in life was to join the Parachute Regiment. Why I chose the Parachute Regiment is because I was so scared of heights. I was mortally scared of heights. As a child, even in India, we have a 7-meter jump. I was very scared of heights. The only time I went to 7-meter board, I just jumped and jumped. Nothing, I didn't see anything, I didn't hesitate. I just jumped. I said, let's see what comes out of it. So I took it as a challenge that to overcome my fear, overcome my apprehensions, I volunteered for the Parachute Regiment. Everyone said, yeah, Bhatia, what are you doing with your life? It is very tough out there. But I said, okay, let me go and meet the challenge head on. And you have to overcome your own apprehensions and own fears. So I joined as a probationer, and I got probated and I joined the unit. I was very thrilled. But I suddenly realized the men had very little respect for me. It was okay. I was an officer, fine. I was a platoon commander, which is the lowest of the officers. I was very proud to be a platoon commander, but then they didn't accept me actually. So we were doing this exercise. We are located in Agra. It was the month of July, August. It was very hot, July, August right now. And this time, October 1974, we went on an exercise. And during the exercise, we were without water for about 2 days. And we didn't have food. And we were in the ravines, in the Chambal ravines, Gulpur side. And after about 2 days, we came across a dry sort of a well, which had little water in it. So I said, okay, let's break and we'll take out water and let's have water. So we, anyway, innovated, took out water. And I just went and sat down to a side in a little bit of a shade. We know uploaded in 3 sections. So each section was allowed to bring water only once. And all 3 sections, when they got the water out, they offered them in the first class. They did not have water. And I knew how thirsty they would have been. We had been without water for 48 hours, literally in the month of July. And that is the day I got accepted as part of that great organization, which is my battalion 6 para, and more important, the company. So what the lesson I learned that day was, you maybe have a position in anywhere, but then you may be a commander, but you can't be a leader. You have to be accepted by your team as one of them. So acceptance is exceedingly important. Once they accept you in the military, they will do anything and everything for you. So that was a thing about acceptability. And this, I think, a lesson learned is that you have to relate with the team. You have to be acceptable to the team. You have to empathize with the team. You have to be a member of that team. You have to recognize everyone. And it is important to know your team, because you should know that who will behave how, under what circumstances. And that is so for the military, that's so for every other sphere, especially for the industry and the corporate. You should know who's going to do what for you. And that is something which I think is exceedingly important, and especially so in this time of COVID, when pink slips are the order of the day. So this is a sort of a sense of belonging after accepted, and thereafter, in our case, the unit becomes your life. I will go on. Can you help me share the screen, please, if it is okay? Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, you say only 10th pass, so you'll have to excuse me.
Sir, I will have to change your slides
Okay.
now.
If
You
you
tell
can
me
just,
when I have to change.
okay, you can just go to the next slide, and thank you. You can go to the next slide, please. Okay, I think let me forget the PowerPoint. It is actually very little. Can you go to the next slide, please, Sumitraji, if you can hear me?
Yeah, 1 second, sir. I'm just trying.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Can you try once from your side? I think it will now share. Just see the
Right.
button below, share screen. And you have to just click on that screen which is there for the PPT.
Okay, let's forget it. It's not happening. Okay, let's forget it.
Sir, is my screen
Yeah,
visible?
it's coming. Yeah, it's coming now.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So this is some of the conditions where the present. Okay, we'll go back. Just go back, please. Next, please. Okay, this is the paratroopers. You see them on the Republic Day parade. This is one of the contingent. Next, please. Okay, we have the soldier. He's the one who is safeguarding us all. So it is just to say he is the top of the world. So that is what leadership is. You have to be on top of the world and feel on top of the world always. Next, please. Okay, this is a very famous picture from the Kargil days. Why I chose Kargil was because we can relate to Kargil. We have most of us have heard, seen, witnessed Kargil. Kargil was the first operation where it came into our drawing room, and the media played a very important role. Kargil, I'll not go to the history, but I would like to just go to the next slide. And this is one of the great leaders of the Indian Army. I don't need to name him. He's Captain Vikram Batra. He was martyred on the 8th of July 1999, and that was the second attack he had put in on a place called 4875. Now, why I chose that Kargil was to just give an example. I was posted as the director para and SF at the Army headquarters in Infantry Directorate, and I had known this area very well. I had walked the complete line of control east of Rosilla. So I was sent from here to get a first-hand feedback from the infantry units and the para units which are there. We had all the para units, 9 of them. So I went there on the day 11th July 1999. The war was still on, and I was not supposed to fight, and I missed out on Kargil. I had commanded a battalion, and I couldn't go back. But my battalion was there, and so were many other battalions, and each one the very brave one. So I will 27 infantry units from 11th of July to 26th of July when the war was finally victory was declared. And one thing which stood out was the junior leadership of the Indian Army. They led from the front. We suffered maximum casualties, fatalities, sacrifices by the junior leadership. And each one of them followed them. Why I picked out them? Because before that, there was a feeling in the army which was creeping in, unnecessarily though, that our junior leaders were not good enough. So Kargil came as a challenge to them, and they took that as a challenge. And the life we lost out there, Vikram Batra, Manoj Pandey, you name them, Vikram. There are so many of them that we can't really name each one of them, but we salute them. One thing that stood out in that report was categorical. Everyone had fought. Unfortunately, the first thing they fought was for unit Izzat. Unit Izzat was the primary driver for the gallantry, that was what the unit, the regiment, and the army and the nation. But the unit came first, the regiment was there, unit and regiment, then the army and the nation. They had a job to do, and they had a difficult job. I had also accompanied some of the foreigners thereafter, and the Israeli defense attaché said, Colonel, don't be funny, you attacked these features. I said, yes, we did. He said, oh, we would have nuked them. We would never attack them because these are very high features. So that is the sort of a leadership which they displayed, and our men went along with the leaders, and they displayed equal gallantry. So what was the driving force behind them was Izzat. And what in the army we call it Naam, Namak, Nishan. They fought for the Naam, Namak, Nishan of the unit, of the regiment, of the army, and of the nation. Because the Nishan is that of the flag you saw was the flag of India. So that is the driving force. And something which we need to imbibe from there is that we have to inculcate the sense of belonging to everyone in organization. He is a stakeholder. He's an equal stakeholder. He may not have the same stakes as the top leader, but he is a stakeholder, and he should know that it belongs to him. May I have the next slide, please? Okay, this again is a very present picture. I'm sure you all know him. He's Colonel Santosh Babu. He made the supreme sacrifice in Galwan on the 15th, 16th June, along with 19 others. Why I put his photograph is, all of us know that, and we've been watching the media, reading the newspapers, and today's social media is very active. And everyone asks a very simple question as to why did the Indian Army not resort to firing in the face of grave provocation by the Chinese in Galwan. Galwan was a treachery. It was a pre-planned ambush where the PLA had carried clubs and spikes and with iron missing. We see the photographs, and in high altitude you don't carry an ounce extra because every ounce matters, every kilogram matters. So because they carried on top, so obviously, but everyone asks a question as to why he did not fire. I say, why questioning a leader who has performed a task given to him? He did not fire because he could not risk two things. One was the safety of his men. That was the Chetwodian model. nation and safety of men come first. How could he, when we are sitting in, lovely air-conditioned rooms, and my own colleagues are doing that. I'm not saying anything. My own colleagues are saying that. Why did they not fire? They're asking this question on television. We should live under media scrutiny. I have no doubts about it. The army has to learn to live under media scrutiny and media clear. But to ask a question as why did not respect his decision, please. He's a leader. He took a decision not to fire because he thought of two things. One, his mission, which is very important to him. His mission specified that you will not fire until there is a grave provocation. There was a grave provocation. He still did not fire. Why did he not fire? Had he fired, he would have injured, shot at his own men. It was close combat, it was hand-to-hand combat. Hand-to-hand combat in the night. How do you know who is who? And we are all, as a nation, getting very worked up on this. Why were they not allowed to fire? We understand that on those altitudes, along the ridges, it is not an open football field. It is very restricted space. And when there are 100 bodies out there hand-to-hand, how does anyone fire that? And one thing in the army that is never ever done, is a blue on blue, which just means that you fire on your own troops. It happens at times. It happens. It can happen. But we never ever do that knowingly, unintentionally. Also, it is not done. If we have a 1% chance of hitting our own force, we will not fire. So that is what I'm trying to say. Respect the decision of the leader. And this leader has, under the grave provocation, he has made a supreme sacrifice, but he has not, I say that again, let his mission down and his men down. So that is the sort of leadership which we are looking at. Next, please. Next, please. Okay, this is, I'll be very short about it. This is a Time magazine cover of 3rd April 1989. And on the other side of the screen, half of the screen is the plan of Mali. Now, Maldives was one operation. As part of it, I was very fortunate to be in the spearhead. I was the PM of the brigade. And this was a 50 para brigade operation. And we launched it from a cold start on 3rd of November 1988. And within 16 hours of the first indication of pending operation, we had completed our task at no casualties whatsoever. But it was one of the most difficult operations. It has not got the recognition it deserves. That is okay. It was a job given to us and we did it. The leader was someone known as Brigadier Farooq Balsara, a very, again, an excellent leader. I was very fortunate to have served with him, alongside him, a real soldier of the highest order, good qualities. And what I want to point out is, we were supposed to paradrop at a place called Male, which is there, and the Haluli airfield. I wonder some of you must have been to Maldives. We in India do not realize how small these places are. Male is less than 3 square kilometers with a population of 55,000 in 1988, of course 1 lakh now. And Halule was an airstrip where we landed in the dark. And we had the code word with us. When I was sitting in the navigation seat, navigation got a bubble in IL-76. We had prepared for it. We went there, and the decision to land or to paradrop on Halule was to be taken by the commander. And Group Captain Bivur, who is the son of a former army chief, General G. Bivur, he was flying us in. And I walked up to Brigadier Balsara. I said, "Sir, decision time. We got the code word." And he said, "We land." He didn't ask anything. He said, "We land." And that was a decision taken by a man knowing very well that the aircraft carrying 200 men on a mission, which the world was watching us, had even one person on that airfield put a cycle on the airfield or a vehicle on the airfield, on the airstrip, and when we are landing, the complete aircraft would have blown off and the mission failed. But then a decision had to be taken. So the leader has to be decisive. He has to take timely decisions. He cannot procrastinate. He cannot say, "Okay, I'll decide tomorrow." Decisions are meant to be taken and highest profile decisions have to be taken, and that is the job of the leader. And when I asked him the next day, I said, "Sir, tell me, you took that decision. What was on your mind?" He says, "Vinod, don't ask me that. That is the moment of truth I faced in my life. 200 men on one order, and that is what it was." So that is the decision a leader has to take. So the decision making of a leader is extremely important. Can I next slide, please? Okay, this is the Maldives team, and in the center you find that's Brigadier Bulsara, young as ever. God bless his soul, is no more, but one of the finance leaders is there. This is after he got back from Maldives. We were not carrying cameras. It was such a hurried operation. We were not carrying anything. We just moved with the uniform we were wearing and nothing else. We spent a lot of time out there. So, but mission was accomplished without a loss of life. Next, please. Okay, this is another surgical strikes. Everyone heard of it. I think I don't need to go into the details. Again, I would like to give a small example of surgical strike. This was performed. The strikes were executed by my regiment, and we all know that this is one of its own kind. This is a strategic signal to Pakistan. It has never happened earlier. We were bleeding. Pakistan was carrying out terrorist attacks in impunity and perpetuity. And then for the first time on the 28th of September, and fortunately that was the day, 28th September, the evening, 5 o'clock, we briefed then Raksha Mantri, Mr. Manohar Parrikar, and Jan Shiketkar was the chairman of the committee. And 28th September, we briefed at 5 in the evening. We never knew that that night something would happen. And Raksha Mantri was there. We briefed him for an hour plus. He listened to us, and he was as calm, as quiet, and that was Mr. Manohar Parrikar. To cut a long story short, this is one of its own kind, one of the best operations. I have been on the line of control, so have many others, and this is the most heavily manned and heavily mined line of control or piece of land anywhere in the world. And these people want to go there in different groups, infiltrate, execute the mission, that is, destroy the targets, and thereafter exfiltrate, that is, come back to own territory, all in a matter of about 7 hours, 7 targets, small teams. And okay, granted to them that they would infiltrate, stealth, surprise, whatever it is. But once you have destroyed the target with fire, to extricate back is the most difficult operation. We were not surprised thereafter. So I was talking to the commanding officer, and I asked, why did you go? It's a very risky one. This is one place where one operation where success was not a probability. Honestly, let me tell you that. Having trained for it all my life, I still say success was not a probability and failure not an option. Why failure not an option? Because had we left even one man behind, we know what happened after Balakot. One man behind, one injured, and we would have again had to pay very heavily for having gone into across the line of control, and they would have made a mockery of the whole thing. You know how Pakistan does it very well. So I asked the commanding officer, why did you, I came to know that he was asked, he said, what is the certainty of success? And you know what is the answer? He said, sir, 500%. I said, you fool. And he's known to me. He's a youngster. I've seen him grow up in the regiment. He's my colleague's son. And anyway, so I asked, you fool, why did you say such a thing, 500%? You know the chances of success were near zero. He said, sir, क्या फर्क पड़ता है? मेरे आदमी नहीं करेगा तो कौन करेगा? हम नहीं करेंगे तो कौन कर सकता है? And मुझे टास्क दिया गया लाइफटाइम का, करेंगे सर, बहुत ट्रेन किया हमने. We have lived for this day, and I was very sure. I said, oh, 500%, 500%, and everyone said, sir, आप हमको चांस दे दो, हम कर देंगे. So that was the confidence which he had on his team, and that is where I said leader has to have confidence not only himself but on his team. I think I've taken a little longer. I'll just finish after this. A leader has to have confidence in his team, and that is, I think, exceedingly important. And that is the one I want to bring out. It is confidence, confidence, confidence. These people went in, they are trained very hard, they are the best in the world, they destroyed the targets, and they came back, and we know that a success story. And you know what and this was a signal to Pakistan and to the international thing what we can do. Next, please. I'll go very fast now. Okay, I'll just take another thing. This is
sir, you have around 5 or 10 minutes more. That's right. Okay. It's very interesting, sir. You can go on.
Thank you, Sumitra. Thank you very much. This is not this photograph is not of any self promotion. The Indian cricket team, and we are as a nation, we are crazy about cricket. we are crazy about all C's in the world: cricket, celebrities, cinema, corruption, crime. So that is what it's media is all about. That's what attracts our attention. Unfortunately, it is so. And now we can we can add the two C's also. That is COVID-19 and China. So, but it is all about C's. So the cricket team, as we all know, having watched cricket all our lives, Indian cricket team was always in the habit of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. If we had 4 balls and 2 runs, we would lose 4 wickets. It happened so often that we had, in the end, we just not could cross the finish line, something which South Africa is famous for now, but we are very famous. So we had the cricket team in Bangalore, the NC, the National Cricket Academy, and they were talking to one Kalil Nair, who was there, who was the commander of the Para Center. And they said, what is this? Why do you keep this? He said, okay, what you do is you come and do a 3-day capsule with us. And the Para Center is located in Bangalore. So the cricket team came and trained for 3 days with the Para Center. I'm not taking undue credit, but this is how it goes. And thereafter, you know that the cricket team has been snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. So that is the leadership, the self-confidence, which I've been talking about, the self-belief, the self-assurance. So that has to be instilled, and that is the job of a leader. The leader has to do that, and for that he has to be competent himself. He has to be doing everything himself. And what actually, why I put Dhoni out there was Dhoni was the one who started all this, and he is very passionate about the army. And I was not very happy when he was being given an honorary commission, because it's not easy to be. But he promised that he will contribute, and he has contributed. He went and done jumps, and he also told me, he said, "So I'm very scared of heights." I said, "Don't worry, I'm very scared of heights," or I was very scared of heights. So, and he was very, very scared of heights, and he did it when he was an active player. He could have injured himself, and that was the end of his career, but he did not do that. So that is something which every leader has to be self-assured, and that comes out of being a thorough professional, knowing your job. And one thing which has to be there with the leader is dictum known as mere piche. All the examples I've given, starting from Vikram Batra to Sara to the cricket team, to Babu, they all said mere piche move. Mere piche move is they led from the front. They led from the front, not only physically, mentally, emotionally, morally, integrity-wise, austerity-wise, professionalism-wise, you name it, but it was always, they stood as an example which everyone looked at. So that is something which everyone can learn from the military. Today we are starting the a tour of duty, which is I'm totally against it. Honestly, I'm totally against it because I do not want to risk the ethos of the army, honestly. But now that we are starting a tour of duty, I think these young people, aspirants who have come with high aspirations, they'll come join the army for 3 years and go back into the civil stream, help nation building. That is something which is very important. It's a good project. I'm against it for own reasons, because I think it's a little too early now. We need to go slow over it. We cannot have the ethos of the army being degraded. And these people may become, other youth also will start looking at a softer option. Unfortunately, everyone wants a soft option. No one wants a hard option. There are, of course, certain people who would still go for the hard option, but most of us would always look at soft options. Next, please. Okay, coming down to the last couple of slides. Now, what does it all imply? It implies combining personal intellectual qualities, strategic orientation. What does it mean? Listen to others and value opinions. You may feel, most of us feel that, I have know all, I know everything. And but we have to listen to others and feel this thing. Mentor and be mentored. So you have to mentor people, and every leader has another leader on top of him. Until, of course, I think the only few leaders who don't have any leader on top of the prime minister of great nations like India, US, or the Pope, religious heads. But mentor and be mentored. When I was retiring, I was asked. I was giving a talk, so I was asked, "Sir, tell us how did you what do you do for your life?" I said, look, every day was a learning curve. And today also every day is a learning curve for me. And he said, who was your greatest mentor? No, that is a very difficult question to ask, because I have had so many mentors in life, and Janak Patil is here, and so is Janak Shiketkar, and they mentored me. But then they asked me, he said, who is one particular leader you would like to mention? So I thought about it for a minute, and then I said, uh, let me say it today again. One of one of my seniors was a very nasty man, very mean man. He was very insecure. He would do everything wrong, and there was something which, and no one liked him. So I said he was my best mentor. And when I was talking to a crowd, they knew about him, so they said, "Sir, how can you say that?" I said, "Look, he was the only one who taught me what not to do. Rest from everyone, I learned what to do. But he was the only one who told me what not to do. And that is exceedingly important. So you can learn from everyone. Someone whom and most of us don't like our bosses in any case. There's nothing new about it. Because you think that you are better than the boss, and the boss thinks that you are no good in any case. So, but you can learn from everyone. And if the boss is bad, if the leader is bad, you can still learn from him, because do not do the same mistakes to your own team. You're a leader yourself. So that is something which you have to do. Hunger for intellect. There's no end to that. The personal knowledge, the more you read, the more you learn. Education and learning is an ongoing process every moment. You have to understand the culture of the organization. And the culture of the organization is exceedingly important. You have to understand it and build on the culture, and not let the culture and thoughts of the organization be degraded. Tolerance for these are not these are not out of management. These are out of personal experiences. Tolerance for ambiguity. Ambiguous situations, COVID-19 is the most ambiguous situation we've ever seen. So you have to have tolerance for ambiguity. This is learning for ambiguous situations. Then you got to apply to, learn. You pursue your goals. Humility and humor is very important. Humility is extremely important. Humor is very important. I'll give you an example of Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw, one of the greatest people we have. Everything he did, there was a sense of humor in it. He could, he could just make the moment so light. And there are stories about him during the 1971 war, how he briefed the Prime Minister in the MO Ops room. And there are a number of stories about him. And he would just, there's a part of humor. And in that humor, he would convey the meaning. So that is something which you have. Trust and delegation. Trust is very important. We do micromanagement. All of us do that, whether at home, at office, and everything. We want to manage everything, micromanage. We're very happy with micromanage, so easy. But trust and delegate and take responsibility thereafter. Moral courage is important. Responsibility. Look, something has gone wrong. Okay, I'm responsible. And once you take the responsibility, your team will hold you in very high esteem. Very, very high esteem. So you have to take responsibility. Yeah, and you have to delegate. You cannot do everything yourself. And that is something which I find not really happening very often. The trust and delegation is. Next slide, please. Okay, very, very quickly. Resolve to be a people-centric leader. People are more important. People are more important than balance sheets. People are more important than your turnovers. Of course, you have to be showing your turnover and balance sheets, but people are more important. So they will pull you out of trouble. They will do everything for you. Collaborate with maneuver mindset rather than attribute approach. No, you have a attrition approach. Okay, pink slips, sack him. But the new man who comes, you'll have to retrain him. You have to regrow with him. He's going to take time. You think he may be better, he may not be better. So it is not easy to. Leaders would take hard decisions. You have to sack him also required. You can't carry dead wood. But the fact is, collaborative approach with the maneuver mindset is more important. Resolve by consent and regard. There will be issues. Please resolve by consent and regard. And moral courage and conviction are exceedingly important. If you don't have the conviction, I don't think we're going anywhere from that. And practice dynamic leadership in the changing times. You have to change. Every day will be a new day. Every day will bring new challenges. You have to live with these challenges. You cannot say, oh, my previous days were very good. When I was young, we used to do this. When I was there, we used to do that. It was so easy. everything is getting more and more difficult, more and more complex. We are an interconnected world, networked world. World is changed. Everything today instant. I want everything today in a hurry. I'm not going to wait for tomorrow. That slow, steady pace is no longer there. Everyone moving at the at the speed of lightning, at the speed of light. So that is what it is. And be inspired by the Army for leadership. That is of course up to the corporate world and others. Today we have to learn from the corporate also. The Army, it's not a one-way process, it's a two-way process. I find when I visit corporate and I do take a few talks once in a while, and there is so much to learn from there. The interactive sessions, I come back learning. Look, and today the young people are so aware. They're intellectually much better. They know so many things. Even a young child today, he can tell you so many things when you deal with. We didn't have the awareness. We didn't have the learning processes. We didn't have the platforms. We didn't have the television. We didn't have internet. We didn't have Wikipedia. So these are something we didn't have. I think the next one is the last one, or second last one. Okay, I got this today morning on the WhatsApp. WhatsApp can be also an education. Most of the time, wasting on WhatsApp. So it said rethinking leadership in a new reality. And I thought it was very good. It talked about the interconnected and vulnerable world post-COVID. Our future leaders will need to be compassionate and emotionally intelligent. And 6 leadership priorities for the new world. Passion. So passion has to be there. Persistence. Intellectual honesty. Systems thinker. Intellectual humility and empathy. And I had already constructed what I was to say. And today morning when I saw that, I said, look, I think I'm on the right track. I hope I'm on the right track, though. So this is something which is very important in a post-COVID world where we live in. And the last slide, I'll finish now. So please, is happiness through just one. Happiness through strategic effectiveness. Read, listen, absorb, analyze, synthesize, empathize, optionalize, consult, collaborate, ideate, acknowledge, and share credit. Please do not take credit for anything. Just give the credit to others. You'll find it is happiness, and happiness is more important. A happy team is an effective team. A happy team will take the organization. It'll be more effective than anyone else. You can have anything, but happiness of a team is exceedingly important. And when is the happiness? It also implies happiness of the extended family. It is not only the people who are working with you, it is their families. They have to come back happy. They have to go back happy. And that happiness has to be spread all over, because if they're happy, their output and the outcomes will always be better. I'll finish out here. Thank you very much for the patient hearing. I have enjoyed this conversation, and I look forward to the interactive session. Thank you once again. Jai Hind.
Thank you, General Bhatia.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and inspiration, to listen to you. I'm sure all our other participants also feel the same way. I think questions have started pouring in. Sumitra, should I start with the Q&A?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. One of the first questions we have here is by Mr. Madan. One second. I'm just scrolling up to see.
Okay,
yeah,
I'll take it.
It says, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so first question is from Mr. Ritesh Taylor. He's asking, where do you put agility in leadership role in the current context?
Oh, yes, I should have spoken about agility. I think agility is exceedingly important. And thank you for asking this question. My daughter works for Media Agility. It's a company that does B2B. And she always keeps talking agility, and I should not have talked agility. Agility and flexibility are exceedingly important. There's no doubt about it, especially in an agile world. I alluded to it when I said, change management and things like that. And so I agree with you totally. Agility is something which every leader has to not only imbibe, but has to face, and he has to agile. He has to be thinking ahead, foresight, forward planning, agility. These are not only buzzwords, these are required in every sphere of life, in every corporate especially, and also in the military. Thank you for asking. Thank you.
Sir, thank you. The next question, actually, 3 people have asked the same question. So I'll just merge it out and speak about it. The question is about patriotism. So some of them are asking as to how patriotism can be imbibed into young people in the country. And secondly, there's one more question which is related to the same subject, wherein a person is asking if the compulsory service of 3 years for the young people to get enrolled in the army or the armed forces in general, is it a good decision, and what is your idea about the same?
No, I think patriotism is something which is a given. Everyone is patriotic. We cannot say that just because I serve the army, I'm patriotic, others are not. I think patriotism in us in every way. The manifestation of the patriotism is something which we have to see. You know, I've spoken about this earlier also. I see no reason why our educated youth, especially the high end institute, high end courses, they do so very well when they go outside. You look at when our people go to the USA, they are disciplined, they are professionals, they are committed, they're punctual out there. They will never do anything wrong out there. They're good citizens. Moment he lands in Delhi, back even on leave to meet his parents, which is once in many years, and you find that he forgets all his values again, what he's practicing out there. Why so? Why should our people who are why should the top multinational companies be headed by Indians? Because they are the best. If they are the best, we are the best. But why are we the best, not in India, but outside? That is a question which we need to answer. Patriotism is everyone. It's not. I'm not saying that we are not a patriotism, but I leave my patriotism to shout from the rooftop. I want everyone to be disciplined, less me. I will cross the red light, but when anyone else crosses the red light, I will say, yeah, देखो red light पार करता है देखो. These are small things. Patriotism is not only giving your life to the country. Patriotism is being a good citizen of the country. If you're a good citizen of the country, you'll contribute much more. So when you talk of patriotism, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go to the rooftop, show a flag, and say, I'm patriotic. You have to be patriotic in words. You have to be patriotic in what you do, what you mean, what you contribute. The nation's GDP is not because of non-patriotism. It is because I don't want to be, I want to, how do I say it? I want to earn more than the other the wrong way. I'm okay if I'm wrong, but others are wrong, then I'm. So patriotism, I think, is in everyone, and we need to change our education system a little. I think education system is something we need to change. We have a British legacy. The British gave us the history. The British gave us the values, which are wrong, and we have to get to our culture. Our culture is exceedingly important, and our culture talks of patriotism everywhere. Our value systems are good. Our beliefs are good. But in between, we have had 200 years of British giving us and degrading culture. Corruption has become a way of life. And I also feel a man who's corrupt is not patriotic at all. Let's face facts. But it is a way of life today. So when you talk of patriotism, it is not only for the army, for guarding the border, or for the high people who contribute to the nation, or for the politicians who shout. We have to change all that. We have to become patriotic inwards. And the second question regarding compulsory, I don't think we are a big country. Compulsory service will not be possible. We have a good organization. Let us keep it good. We cannot be degrading that organization. And compulsory service has not served anyone's purpose anywhere. Today, the major weakness of the People's Liberation Army of China is compulsory service. Other than Israel, I don't think compulsory service has served anyone, including the USA. This tour of duty is not compulsory service. Tour of duty is something which will have a selection process, which will be limited in number, and which will contribute to nation building in an indirect way. They will come, they will serve in the army and go back into the civil street, whether into administration, whether it's corporate, whether it's banking services, financial services. So that is something which is different. A compulsory service, I think, is not for the Indian Army. We are a nation who have security threats all along our borders, be it the western border, the northern border now. When I was commissioned, we used to always say China is a long-term threat. Another retired people are telling me China is long-term threat. I said, no, it's a today's threat. And today we are saying China is today's threat. So we have to secure our nation, whether external security, internal security. We have challenges, and we should not be doing things which compulsory service is not for the Indian Army. We have, our nation is big. I have done a tenure on the recruitment directorate, and for each vacancy, you find hundreds of people aspiring to join. So where does compulsory service come to be? It is not possible. We are a very large country.
So the next question is, what qualities must be there in a good leader to fight criticism, and how is self-regulation necessary in effective leadership?
Criticism is something which is very easy to say that, I would like criticism. So please criticize. Most of us are even good leaders, many good leaders cannot take criticism. So someone, you have to be in that in the fourth or fifth plane to take criticism. So, but constructive criticism, you should take constructive criticism. Constructive criticism is something which is very good, and you should be able to also look back, reflect on what you have done, go back, and the spouse is the best to put you down a few notches. So respect our criticism, spouse. I'm not being, I'm gender neutral. When I say spouse, I literally mean spouse. The men, not so much. The wives a little more. They're the ones who actually can criticize you very constructively. So listen to them. Something. So criticism is very important, but we cannot take criticism in our stride, especially from our juniors, colleagues. You have to may take it. From seniors, you have no choice but to take it. But when you take criticism from your juniors, I think that is something which makes you a better leader. When a junior criticizes you, you can sit down with them, you interact with them, converse with them, you make them understand your viewpoint. And if you feel he's got a point, you tell him, okay, good, this is something which I have learned from you. I will try and correct myself. If I don't correct you, come back to me and criticize me again. But I'm talking about ideal world. It does not happen very often. Very few leaders have the courage of conviction to go and tell your junior, okay, you criticize me. A difference between anger of a junior and criticism of a junior. In Japan, they have, when you're leaving your factories and all, they have the figure of your bosses, and you can punch him and take all your anger. But that is different. When criticism, it is something which a junior will tell you, okay, sir, you are doing this, don't do it, this is not correct. But we have our own insecurities, a human being, and criticism from juniors is not really taken very well. But if you can't do it, I think that's a very good thing. What are the next?
Self-regulation, sir.
Yeah, self-regulation is something which is, which I spoke about, mere piche move. When I said mere piche move, means you set an example, you regulate yourself, you do everything and anything better than your team. Your team should know that even if even in manufacturing, a screw has to be fixed, you would do it better. If a PowerPoint presentation is done, you would do it better. If there's an output required, you would do it better. You have to regulate yourself in a manner that you can do everyone's job. So that, I think, would be the best of self-regulation, when you regulate yourself to be able to do that, and still not feel very proud of the fact that, look, I'm better than you. You don't have to tell your junior you're better than you. Obviously, you're better than him. You're the leader, so you have to be better than him. But you can't rub it in. That, look, yaar, तुझे नहीं आता यार, तू छोड़ दे, मैं करता हूँ. It doesn't happen that way. You do it and give the credit to him. So that is something which will make you a better leader. He'll respect you more. And even if he, does something which is not up to your this thing, you have to encourage him by appreciating him. Appreciation goes a long way. Most of us do not do that. For self-regulation, everything has to come from within you. If you cannot regulate yourself, you cannot yourself be punctual. You cannot be committed. You're not disciplined. You want to leave early. You want to spend time on the mobile during your work hours when everyone else is doing something. There's a confidence on you. So these are something which is not done. But then most of us are willy-nilly not regulating ourselves very well.
Sir, we have time for just two more last questions. So first question is, sir, what is the real quality that is essential to take decisions by a leader when you don't have anyone else to consult? So when you have to take a decision yourself and you don't have anybody else to consult, so how does it affect? So I think you were talking, sir, about the Galwan Institute recently, where the Sikh youth who was in the army who took the decision, and so probably you can just highlight a bit on that case, sir.
See, most of the time, as a leader, no one's going to do your hand holding. You have to take your own decisions. And the tougher the decision, I think it is easier to take. You should be able to take that decision and live by it. It is not the decision you are scared of taking, it's the responsibility. Decision you can take. It is the responsibility and the accountability which comes with the decision. Each one of us likes authority, but I do not like accountability with that. So you have to understand, as a leader, it is your responsibility, and the decision taken in the honesty of purpose, with the honesty of intent, with your own competence levels, for the benefit of the organization, will always be a good decision. The decision which is taken on based on a mission, based on your role, based on a vision, so that will be a good decision. But if a decision is taken based on agendas, based on personal beliefs rather than organizational effectiveness, they may not be the good decisions. Like I talked of Colonel Babu. There was three Punjab jet. I don't know. This is what I've heard. And when they saw this, and they really went on all the way out. They took a decision out there. Look at the decision taken at a point which has had an impact on a nation, on a nation's psyche, on a nation's pride, on a nation's self-belief. Today, we know that we can take the Chinese on. It's not a balance sheet. We lost 20. It's very painful. Whether the Chinese lost 40 or not, that's not the point. It is not a balance sheet. But the fact remains that we have a pride in those people who took the decision. So decision taken in honesty of purpose, honesty of intent, will always be a good decision. I spoke about Brigadier Bilsara. Look at the decision. There was no one to help him. The complete, when we got back, and he was the chief of the army staff, General Vacation, asked him, and I was there present. I was with him. He said, well, what happened? He said, sir, we would have been a laughing stock of the world had we failed. I took a decision to land because he was criticized for a decision to land. Everybody criticized him. He said, how can you take a decision to land when the airfield is not secure? Even someone driving a vehicle and the mission would have failed. He said, sir, at that point of time, I had to take a decision. It was my decision. And we would have laughing stock. Had we jumped, we had other problems. He took the risk. He took the decision. And had we failed, he would have paid for it. So when the decision is for the organization, it's an honesty of purpose, there's an honesty of intent, it's for the larger cause, I think it will always be a good decision. That is what has to be done.
So the last question, it is the age of Infowar, sir, and leaders are also influenced with the Infowar. So how do leaders gear up for the Infowar? And you have been speaking on the subject quite effectively in a lot of forums, which I have been a part of. I've heard you, sir. So can you please give us some details about this, sir?
Yeah, I think, tomorrow's wars, information wars, perception management is exceedingly important. Every organization, not only the military of course, information war is very important. Let me give you an example. The Balakot strikes, exceedingly well executed. We won the battle. We lost the war. We just lost the war. We lost. We have to understand that. At 5:20 in the morning, I got up that day to go for golf. So I just opened my Twitter and I found a tweet by the DG ISPR saying that Indian Air Force aircraft bombed Balakot and nothing happened and all. So Balakot is a village right next to the line of control in Rajouri sector. And I walked that place. I've been the commander there. And I said, why should Air Force strike Balakot? I said, ye pagal ho gaya ye. Because it was not Balakot. Sorry. It was Jabba Town. Jabba Top is 25 kilometers from Balakot. The world knew Jabba Top. We knew Jabba Top. Jabba Top was a terrorist training camp. But today, no one knows Jabba Top. Everyone talks of Balakot. So that is the information war I'm talking about. Information war is exceedingly important. Information war, Balakot, we just lost the information domain, in the information domain. We were parroting the Pakistani narrative. Look at that. We call it Balakot strikes. We should have centered it on Jabba Top. Jabba Top is a known training camp of the Jaish. But no one knows Jabba Top today. 25 kilometers for Air Forces, plus minus 2.5 to 5 meters. We are talking 20 meters. So information war. Look at what is happening along the Indo-China border today. It's all information war. The three warfare strategy of China is public opinion, PSYOPs, information war, and legal warfare. That's what they're practicing out there. And willy-nilly, we are looking at that. So it's a topic I can go on and on. I will not go on. I'll give you one more example. Most of us are Twitter, most of us are very intelligent people, most of us want to know what's happening out there. And there's this great image, satellite imagery interpreters world over. They're sitting out interpreting the satellite. China's here, China's here, China's here. There's so many kilometers across the LEC. I said, no, you can interpret the imagery, but who is giving the alignment of the line of actual control? That is not given by the satellites. That is your perception. That is, you have plotted it out there. You plot the same thing, West and China is not in the data. So let's not talk about it. So information war is very important. We have to create structures for that. We've been talking about it, both information and cyber wars. So, but also perception management for leaders. The leader's perception management has to be there. He has to factor in the perception management, whether it's of a product, of his company, of his reputation, of his brand, of the leader himself. I'm not talking about being a fraud, but the leader has to manage his own perception. He has to be seen as a leader. He has to believe as a leader. People should know that, look, as long as person A is there, this company will continue to do well. I will continue to do well. I will be looked after. My well-being will be assured. My job is assured. My outputs will be there. My inputs will be there. My resource will come on time. So all this has to be, it's a question of perceptions. So perception management, I think, is exceedingly important. And we are living in a world where everything revolves around perceptions. If I perceive that this is a good product, I will buy it. If I'm not a good product, I will not buy it. If I perceive it as a good leader, I will go for it. So perception is very important. And I think tomorrow, Mr. Vineet Goenka is doing this another webinar on social media driving the national narrative. I think it will be a very interesting one.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I think we are running short of time, but the discussion is still very interesting, and we really don't want to go go offline, at this point. But I'm sure you will assure us that you will reconnect with us some other time, and we can do one more session, and probably there we can entertain more questions. Sir, we have very good takeaways from today's session. Like, first thing is you talked about sense of belonging, Naam, Namak, Nishan. Timely decision making, especially in high risk profile decisions. You have mentioned that leader has to be competent. There has to be the hunger for intellect, understanding culture. And in fact, next week, we are having a eminent speaker speaking about cross-cultural leadership, taking responsibility. That is very important, because today what happens is people, the leaders try to shrug off the responsibility on others. And that is something which the leaders need to work upon. You have spoken that people are more important than anything else, and I can just go on. And you, lastly but not the least, you said acknowledge and share credit, because that is what encourages others. So, sir, thank you so much. It has been really, really interesting, and we have taken some good takeaways from this whole session. I'm sure each and everyone has benefited from this. And next Saturday we are again going to come back and discuss. So, sir, with that, I would like to thank you, and I would like to then request you to log off, in case, because we will just continue ourselves for 10 more minutes from this.
Thank you very much. Thank you to each one of you. Thank you, Sumitra. Thank you, Umaji. And thank you each one for being very patient, listening to me, an old man blabbering away. So thank you very much indeed. Jai Hind. I'm wishing the very best. Stay home, stay safe.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
I'm leaving.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Jai Hind, sir.
Jai Hind, sir.
Okay, so Uma and I are going to continue for the next 5 or 7 minutes odd. So I'll just quickly run through a video which I believe all of you must see, and that will really help you to understand the kind of leadership program that we are running. So just give me a moment, please. I think there's a confusion. 1 second. Uma, you can just continue. I will just share it in a moment. I have too many screens open at my end.
Okay. I'll be happy to answer any questions if people have about the Leadership Acceleration Program itself. So one of the things we run, at the outdoors is a civilian trek to Siachen. We work with the Army Adventure Wing to make this happen so that civilians get a feel of what it is like to be posted to a place like Siachen. That's one. Secondly, it's also a kind of a once in a lifetime experience for anyone who is fit enough to do the trek. This is one trek that actually requires a certain amount of physical fitness. We conduct medical tests before we accept participants into this program. And we started working with the Indian Army last year. Yes, somebody's just asked a question whether it's Siachen Base Camp. The trek starts from base camp and it goes up to Kumar Post. That's Camp 4. So the entire program is for 21 days, which includes, after you land into Leh, 21 days starts from there. So some amount of training that happens, acclimatization in different levels. And then we take you on the trek, which is a 9-day trek, 4 days to go up, 1 day of rest and recuperation at Camp 4, and 4 days to come down. So all of that put together is 21 days. Yes, it is Siachen. We will also be doing treks this year. Hopefully, once the Corona thing gets over, we kickstart in Arunachal also. That's the video that's coming up. That was last year's team that went up. So just take a look at the video. So like I said, it is once in